process. And even the other day, I was doing a deal, watching the doors open and watching this tsunami of people come through the door. It still blows me away, and I've been to over 50 of these things. And getting back to Bob, talking about Lake Mead, the Classic, the number one thing it's done in the sport, it's done so much. But the number one thing I've seen is bringing young anglers that want to do it. Watching Bobby Murray win that tournament was my inspiration. It gave me the courage to say, I'm gonna quit one of the best jobs in the world and go fishing. And I did, but this tournament was the inspiration to do that. And I guarantee you 85% of these anglers that have fished in the Classic or that are fishing here today, that was their inspiration initially. That was this genius idea Bob y'all came up with, called the Bassmaster Classic. Mine, you got to remember, if you're a fisherman that's been in it, and this is why the cast stuff he's talking about became so important to me. I was like a running back, okay, that the quarterback hands the ball to, and he breaks through the line. There's a hole there, he breaks through, and then he dodges a linebacker to the right, and then cuts down the field to the left, and gets by the safety and goes for a 70-yard touchdown. He doesn't really know what happened because he's in the middle of the game, unless he can go watch game film. And then the game film, he goes, wow, my tackle knocked the crap out of that tackle, made that hole. And my tight end came across and took out the linebacker. And then my safety knocked out, my wide receiver knocked out the safety. So now he got to see the whole game. And it gives him, believe me, I know watching cast was the first thing that did that for me, sadly. Because I was always in the middle of the game. I didn't see everybody else's contribution. And I'm so glad now that I have game film, thanks to the cast material and other things now that allow me to see everything that's taking place. So that's really the Classic for me. I was in the game for so long, and so as much as I hate not being in the game out there today, there is a really good side to being able to appreciate y'all. I get to come see y'all. Believe me, we don't really want to do that in the beginning. we don't want to stand there and sign autographs when we think we should be out there fishing. But over time, I've learned to appreciate it. And today, every day people come up and tell me something like being inspired that almost make me cry. And so thank y'all, and I'm glad we've had the vehicles now that I'm allowed to see the whole game.
What does that mean to you?
I remember I was, I guess, the only one here that was at the first Classic. And Ray did everything in the world because we'd gone out there a couple weeks ahead of time, or months ahead of time, to do a seminar. And I'd been invited to go fish the lake, and so Ray didn't want me to fish the lake. And so I said, I'm going to go fish Lake Mead tomorrow. This was months before the tournament. No, you can't do that. I got some things for you to do. So, and then Bob came up with things for me to do. And I remember, I never did get to fish Lake Mead. So I put this in the back of my mind just before we got on that plane where he announces Lake Mead. I wondered then, maybe it was Lake Mead. Well, I hadn't done any research on Lake Mead, so that was the deal. I did catch a big bass on Lake Mead. I think I had the number one bass. But my closest experience was at the St. Lawrence River. And up to that time, I'd laid all my eggs in one basket. I thought Angler of the Year was a special thing for me, and I was trying to do well all year to have the point title. And so I managed to do that. I was really proud of my accomplishment there. And I know Rick and I would talk back and forth because he was the champion of winning the Classic as well as Hank. And it was kind of like, which is more important, Angler of the Year or the Classic? And so I always thought that the Angler of the Year was awful important. But anyway, it's now proven maybe not, but it's still a big deal. For me, it was my big deal. And so when it came to the Classic at the St. Lawrence, it all boiled down to the last day. I had the lead. Bo Dowden was right there too. and there was a little crack in the Mary Island Ledge near Alexandria Bay, going into I forgot Lake of the Isles. And I'd gone in, I'd shaken this big old 5 or 6 pound bass off in the warm-up. And I went in the first day, I didn't catch it. Went in the second day, I didn't catch it. And I went into the third day, I'm leading the tournament. And just as I'm ready to cast into that little crack, it's late in the day, a little boat comes up and says, "You should have been here 5 minutes ago." And I said, "Well, what happened 5 minutes ago?" He said, "That fella bowed down, and he came through here and he threw in that little crack and caught the big bass of the day." And so I just said, why didn't I do this 5 minutes before? Maybe I would have won, or maybe he wouldn't have caught the fish and I would have won, or any kind of scenario. And you always every time you lose, you think about how you lose. And it just bothered you. Not that you win, you don't think about the wins, you think about the ones you lost.
And so, there had to have been, it's right now we know there's a lot of stuff going on with technology and whatever over the last 5 years. I'm kind of curious, Hank, kind of talk us through those classics, but then in the grand scheme of things, how much did this sport change? How much did the classic change between the first one you won and the last one 10 years later?
Well, the very first classic I won was in 1979 at Lake Texoma, about 68 miles from here. And we had to weigh in the parking lot of the Holiday Inn. And there may have been 150 or 200 people there. And so then we went on from there to Alexandria Bay that everybody's talked about up in New York. We had an outside weigh-in there in 1980. And then in 81, Ray came up with the idea of having an indoor weigh-in, which I thought was absurd. And look where we are today. And so that was the big change.
Process, and even the other day watching, I was doing a deal